There is.
Hey, how's it going, man?
It's going well. Kind of somber and reflective this morning, if you didn't catch it.
That's hey, it's important to have those days. And you mentioned about journaling, and I don't think I journal as consistently as I could, but I'm creating a journal actually right now to go along with my book Rise. It's
Great.
going to be a companion journal, and I'll send you a copy when I release it. But it's going to
Amazing.
have prompts in there as to what to write because a lot of times I've noticed people, myself included, sometimes when you open a book and it's just blank pages, you don't necessarily know what to write. And yes, there is
Mhm.
good time to flow, but sometimes just a prompt, write something
Yes.
based on the prompt that's given can get you going. And then all of a sudden you're writing all these other things that come to mind after, and the
Yes.
cascade thoughts follow from that. So that's what I'm hoping to
Mhm.
create um, with this journal. So it's funny that you mentioned that.
Yeah, no, I've never actually used prompts and I'm not against them. I just never like I just for me, the exercise of journaling is just literally like pouring out everything in my head onto paper.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So there's a sense of that it's just going blah. So there's no rhyme or reason, and there's days I'm carving stuff in the page because I'm angry, and there's days I'm just like just flowing through whatever's in my head.
I like
So
that on the page.
because like literally it's like "Arr, I'm so like,
Yeah.
like but talk about those prompts for a second. Like I mean like and you know how what the benefits of those prompts could be and what would be an example of a prompt that you would use, not necessarily spelling out what you're doing in your book, but like where you've seen that and how it's worked.
Oh yeah, I don't mind sharing. And just to your point, every page of the journal is going to have a flip side, which will have a space for just doing exactly what you said, carving your thoughts out, pouring out your thoughts, just a space for doing whatever you want. So there's space for that in there as well. Um,
Mhm.
but I've done some research into, what things help us move forward as far as productivity and just well-being and happiness. And one of the main things that comes up is gratitude journaling.
Yes.
The studies are in, and I'm sure that you've probably talked about it with your other guests, and you're
Mhm.
already nodding. So I know a lot of people know
Love
this,
it.
but
Yeah.
you show that you're more happy when you just list something that you're grateful for every day. So
Mm.
I've taken the 4 steps. My book is called Rise, and the 4 steps I've taken each into a section. So ours for reframing your mind in the morning, having gratitude in the morning. I have a section for intention. What's your intention for today? It can
Yes.
be something moving towards whether it's a goal for yourself, goal for your business, or even just a goal for your family. So for me, I do this now, and one of the examples that I write is my intention for today is to be more present with my wife and son, and then that's it,
Mm.
right? So it doesn't have to be related to business. So just setting out
Yes.
deliberate intention for the day. Third area is just positive affirmation statements. So it can be something like I feel good about myself today, or I feel confident. Just something to build your confidence up. But you can also
Yes.
use that space just for acceptance statements. In my workshops, I
Hmm.
teach that we don't always feel like writing affirmation statements. I feel amazing today, but
Right.
maybe you just need a statement of acceptance, right? So your
Yes.
statement of I accept my body, I accept who I am, just the way I am today. I accept the
Yes.
fact that I'm not motivated today and I'm just going to lie down and that's okay.
Yes.
Sometimes those statements, you need to have that level. And then the
That,
final one,
yes.
yeah, and
Yes.
the final section that I have on there is engagement. So that's the E in Rise.
Mhm.
I got this from an amazing storyteller named Matthew Dix, and he's a teacher, but he's also an amazing storyteller. He wrote a book called Storyworthy, and in it,
Yes.
he actually talks about something called homework for life. There's a TED
Okay.
talk on it. You can look up Matthew Dick's TED talk. He talks all about it. But in it, he says that if we just go back at the end of each day and ask
Hmm.
ourselves, what is the one noteworthy thing that's happened today? And it doesn't
Yes.
have to be anything major. But if someone said, yesterday, Martin, you have to give a speech on something that happened to you yesterday, just a 5-minute speech on something that happened yesterday. And the process of doing that, it's hard at first, but when you start writing down, he calls it homework for life. I just call it engaging with life. Every
Yes.
single day, it makes you realize that your life is not just a mundane series of events. Every day can teach you something. So, for instance, the other
Absolutely.
day, my 2-year-old son was, okay, my Siri was coming on. I don't know why, on my watch. So the other day, Phoenix was, being a 2-year-old and just pushing limits and pushing buttons. And of course, I got irritated. I got upset. But at the end of the day, it became my homework for life, my engaging moment of the day, because I thought, listen, that's our nature. Our nature is to push boundaries. Our nature is to try
Yes.
to do more than the rules say we can do. And that's how we grow. So
Right.
yes, he was being disobedient, but at the time, but as I reflected on it, it became a story about, it became a thought about us as humans pushing past our imagined boundaries. So
Right.
that's how something simple can become something significant. So it didn't seem
Absolutely.
like a wasted day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So those,
I might even
yeah,
I
go
might
ahead.
even throw in the word explore in there, like engage, but explore as well, right? Because that's what you're doing is exploring what the end boundary is. Like, is that really the end boundary, or let's see what's slightly beyond that line?
Exactly. And you do that all the time. I mean, you're pushing yourself to better limits, not only physically, but personally. And I think we forget to do that sometimes.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's the fourth section, just kind of looking at your
Love it.
day. And all of a sudden you'll look back and you'll say, listen, okay, I went through this month and there's some significant things that happened this month. And life then becomes more of an adventure. You look for things within your day. You start to wake up in the morning and say, okay, what can I learn? How can I, what poignant, engaging moment has happened today? And life becomes a
Yes,
lot more interesting that way.
it does. It does. And I see that, those interactions with our clients too. Like when I ask someone like, "How was your day?" and I actually want to hear their answer. And I might have like one or two more questions after to follow up that. And so it's not like good. And what's our first exercise? It's like, no, no, actually I want to talk about this, right? Like draw people into their own story. I
Mm.
think like, in the same way that a journal will prompt it, I think that sometimes we need to do that. People want it, like if we give them practice and they'll share their story when people actually want to hear it.
Yeah, I think that's important to like draw people into their story because you're right. You say, "How was your day?" Like you're walking outside and you see your neighbor and you just say it. You're almost, gone before they even answer.
Right.
They have that
Yes.
pre-recorded, a pre-automated answer. And if you ask a
Yes.
follow-up question, it's almost like they're taken aback for a minute because
Yes. Yes.
oh, you actually care about the rest of my day. How are you doing? Good.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
how is so and so? And I like how you come up with two follow-up questions. I have to
Yes.
challenge myself to do that because the introvert in me doesn't want to talk to anybody.
Right. Yeah.
In that way, this COVID isolation hasn't bothered.
It's bliss, right? Like, you're just cycling through there. There you go.
Well, I think we froze there a little bit.
Buffering a little bit, but I caught the last bit. You're saying basically how your introvert's been liking the quarantine.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's me. Is that me? That's
I'm not sure. Like, I think we're good now, though. Yes? A little bit of a delay.
yeah. I do see a little bit of a delay. So right now, I can see myself moving normally,
Yep.
but there's waiting circle around your face. So as long as everybody can see me and you together, I don't mind if you're
Right.
buffering on my end. So I don't know how it looks on your end. Is it okay?
Yeah, it looks the same. Like, I'm sure everyone's just watching us navigate this, but like, everything seems like it's fine, but a bit of a lag. So
Okay.
we'll we'll keep it moving.
Okay. Cool.
The so yeah, so then what kind of prompts? So you're still on the journal for a second. So what would be an example of a prompt that you would put on any given page?
So yeah, exactly. The prompt would just be something simple as my intention for today is, and then you go
Yes.
through what your intention for the day is. And on a day, maybe like a weekday, I might have something that I want to do specifically. Like, so I'm doing this journal. My intention for today is to get back to my editor and you know do the homework that she assigned me. And my intention for today is to finish 5 lines of my new book. that could be something that can be in the journal that way, and it can be anything. Just setting your intention for today, and I think that a lot of times we forget to plan for our
Yes.
day. And I don't want to say that you have to plan every moment and plan your life out and make it so mundane and rigid, but planning does allow you to be more likely to complete things. So
Yeah, absolutely. I play with those words like living life on purpose, living with intention, like all those kind of like all those words. And I find myself landing it just at intentionality. So it's not like I have this like strict like 19 checkpoint items I need to get through today. But even in my most relaxed, no structured day, there's still a sense of being intentional with it. Like I'm going to rest today. I'm going to not pick up my phone today. I'm going to use my bike everywhere instead of using my car, or like, whatever it is. Like there's still a sense of intention even in days when I don't have a list of things to tick off of boxes in.
yeah, that's perfect. Those are perfect. You'd write all those things in your journal. My intention for today is, and the good thing about the engagement part, which is the good moment from your day, I make sure that that's the last thing you do for the day, so that at the end of the day you actually review, the first prompts that you had and what you were grateful for, what your intention was,
Yes.
your self statements, before you do your last section, which is engagement. And then
Hmm.
that way you're actually reviewing your day too. Because I don't know if you've
Yes.
ever had this. You write down a bunch of notes and, oh yeah, I have some good thoughts. And then you never read them again.
Never read them again. Yes.
And yeah, what's the point of
Yeah.
writing it down? You're not even going to reflect on it at least at the end of the day. I have some
Right.
friends go back at the end of their week and they read everything they've written through, or they take out highlights, and maybe that they use it for something, or maybe they just reflect on it. But a
Right.
lot
Right.
of
Right.
times I'm guilty of it. I've written down great things in my journal that I've never read again.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. And this is like, I feel like this is like Martin pouring his heart out week. But there was a time, legit, with my journal. I've been journaling for as long as I can remember. I've been journaling. There was a time when I was afraid to go back to my journal. I was
mm,
afraid to see what I wrote and how I felt at a certain time.
mm.
You know what I
Do you
mean? And it
think?
wasn't.
Sorry, go
No, no,
ahead.
go ahead. No, say, go
I
first.
just wonder if you thought, if it was that you thought you might have been embarrassed at the person that you were, that how much you've grown and you don't want to look back. Is that what it is, or what was the fear?
That, I wouldn't have been mature enough to even recognize that that was a reason, but that was probably one of them. The other one was just simply not wanting to revisit that pain,
Mm, okay.
right? So there's a
Yeah.
sense of like going through different points in my life where, and I've had a good life, but there's still like pain is pain, and it's relevant and relative in that sense. So there's times when I hit some low points that I didn't want to see it again. Like I took it out of my head, put it on paper so that I didn't have to look at it again.
Mm. And then that was, and what I've seen some people do is they've turned that into, turning your pain into purpose. I don't know if you've ever heard that before, but
Hmm. Hmm.
the pain that they've gone through, once you heal through that, it becomes something you can talk about on one of these episodes. It becomes
Yes.
something that if you talk about it, chances are, I've found anyways, that people will resonate with it, and you'll get a lot of me tooers out there that will say, you know what, no one's ever articulated that before.
Hmm.
Let me share my story, and
Right.
that's what happens when when you do your story, whether it was Run Towards the Roar at StoryShare or any other
Yes.
time you talk. I'm sure you've had people come up to you after and say, you know what, Martin, my story, let me tell you about what happened to me. And
Yes.
so that stuff, that the places that you're afraid to go always make the best stories. I always tell that to people as a speech coach,
Yes.
my other
Hmm.
hat.
Right.
Those stories that you're afraid to talk about will always make the best ones.
They will. Mr. Rogers said,
Mr.
if it's
Rogers.
Mr. Rogers said, if it's mentionable, it's manageable.
Ah, okay. Ah, I love phrases, so I like that one. You're gonna have to take that one, buddy.
Yes. Yes. Because I was like, as soon as it can leave our mouth, if we can get the courage to mention it, then everything you said there comes to pass. It's people who recognize it, people support you, people identify with it. And and Kwesi, when you were doing your story share things, and I shared my story there, as soon as I came down, there was a gentleman who's like, I went through a divorce too. That was so helpful for me. I really feel like that really helped me to just put a new lens on what I'm going through. Thank you. You know what I mean? Like it's like, and it wasn't like I like fully just stepped down and bumped into this guy, and that's what he's saying. It's like, okay, well that just affirmed like everything, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And those are the moments that feel good because I don't know about you, but when I go on stage and I share personal stories, sometimes you get that self-doubt and you think, okay,
Yes,
well, did I share too much? Did I, am I pushing too much? Is it too heavy for some people? And then you get that validation of someone coming up to you.
that validation.
And it's giving courage, giving other people the courage to do the same. Marianne Williamson has this long quote that I don't have memorized, but you've probably seen it everywhere. But she talks about just that one thing. When you share your light, when you share the things you've gone through, you give other people the courage to do the same.
Yes,
The one caveat I would say to that is what someone said to me once is that you want to speak from your scars, not from your wounds. So if something happened to you yesterday, don't go on stage and share it tomorrow. Don't go on a
right.
live video and talk about it and be all weepy and everything like that. You want
Yes,
to make sure that you can give something to someone so that when you're sharing your story,
perspective.
a lot of people want to hear your pain, but they also want to hear how you progress through and
Right.
what they can do in a similar situation. If you haven't figured that out, I would say work that through before you get out there and share.
Yes. Yeah. Or be working it through. Like, I mean, a
Or
lot, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's times that even with my kids, when I'm going through certain things, and I've said to them, like, it's gonna sound cocky, but like, watch how I come through this, right? When I'm
yeah,
in the middle of it, right? Like, 'cause I mean, like, I know that this is an ugly time, but like, I know they're gonna get through it. So like, watch how I handle this, so we can
yeah,
work through it. So you can see how I can move from disappointment to confidence that this is gonna work out, or if it doesn't work out, I can manage it. But that's
yeah.
yeah, that
I
process.
like the way you phrased it. Absolutely. You always speak about things you're working through, not things you perfected.
Yeah.
So that people can see you on the journey and know that you're fallible as well. So there's that balance to find, right?
It's a balance, yes. No, but no, Quincy, and now your story is so powerful, and there's so many different chapters to it, and where you are now and stuff like. So, how do you present your story today? If you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess uh, the story is about what aspects of the story the audience needs to hear.
Okay.
So as a speaker, I look at A, my audience, B, what I've been brought in to speak about, and based on that, that's what I share, right? So my backstory is I used to be a police officer. I got a call at an airport, got in a physical confrontation with a man. Unfortunately, he died. We did everything we were trained to do. We testified that we did everything we were trained to do. We were still charged with lying about what we testified about, which was kind of crazy because it was videotaped. It was in a public airport. We had no reason to lie, but we told the truth. We were charged with perjury. I was convicted, went to jail, lost my job. That's my 30-second story. I don't tell that on stage, but
Yes.
depending on speaking to,
Yes.
that determines what aspect of the story I tell. I
Yes.
tell all full version to first responders. I mean, from the airport, dealing with the man at the airport, all the way to what I do today. All of that gets mentioned to first responders because they get it. They've been in calls that are similar. If
Yes.
I'm speaking to a corporate audience or government or educators about stress management, I typically start at the perjury and jail part, right? Because
Yes.
that's and um, that's when the stress management techniques that I had to apply to get through being incarcerated, being in solitary, and going through that. I talk about it in my book Rise, and I talk about it in my workshops. Just the techniques of stress management, whether it's meditation, journaling, just focusing on the things you can control, these types of things. So I talk
Yes.
about that with them. If I'm talking to a high school audience or youth, from grade 8 all the way to grade 12, once again, I explain the perjury story briefly, but then I go into other stories from my life that taught me lessons. A lot of those stories come from when I was younger, like when I failed in a spelling bee and when I had a crush on a girl in school, that taught me lessons that also helped me get through my, my losing my policing career story. So
Yes.
the aspects of the way I tell the story is different depending on who I speak to.
Yes.
If that
It makes perfect sense, and that actually answered that question absolutely brilliantly. Um, Brilliantly, because like that's the question I personally had for you, which benefits our audience as well, is because I know that when we share a story, the audience, like you meditatively go into this place of trying to understand what part of the story does my audience need to hear. It's not what part of the story do I want to tell, it's what part of the story does my audience need to hear.
exactly. And listen, when you go on stage, when I speak, I know this, and this is the biggest problem I think some speakers have is that here's the thing: nobody cares about your story. I'll just get that out there right now. Nobody cares about their story. They want to know, why are you in front of me and what's in it for me? My
Yes.
story, I just tell it because it gives me credibility. It gives me
Yes.
credibility to talk about my topic. But you need to leave with tools that are going to help you in your life. So my story is just the credibility piece, and then I pull out the lessons, and that's what I focus on
Yes.
for the talk that I give. You're going to know my story by the end of the talk, but
You're
it's
gonna know
about
how
what.
that story applies to your life is the piece.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever listen to your story as you're telling it and hear your progress in your story? Like last time I said it, I emphasized this, or wow, I'm not feeling the same sting in the way I presented it this time. Do you ever catch yourself in your own emotional journey as you're sharing a story?
There are sometimes when I do it as I'm speaking. Most of the times is when I go back. I mean, I try to record as much as possible and then listen and say, okay, that part, I'm not telling it with as much passion. I kind of work on how I deliver and what content I use. But yes, now we're all on virtual right now, and I guess slowly getting back to being in person when it comes to speaking. But even virtually, I will look at faces when I mention a certain point, and sometimes I'll see people have comments when I do interactive portions. And if I notice that the interaction is more or less at a certain point, then I can say, okay, this is what I need to focus more on, or this is what I
Yes.
need to do less of. Um, yeah, but it's more so after I give the talk that I
Hmm.
kind of look back and see what areas I can switch up and change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did it feel sharing your 30-second version of your story a few minutes ago?
I've done a few podcasts and shows. The 30-second version, sometimes it feels fine to share it. I just don't want people to think that I feel flippantly about the whole thing. But at the same time, there's not enough time to go into everything. So I just want to give people the bullet points. So yeah, it feels fine. Yeah, to answer your question.
Yeah. Yeah. The Yeah, sorry this sounds like this is like I usually say that these are conversations, not interviews, but I love that as we're talking about these certain things that there's like you said, there's credibility that comes with your story that ties into stories like resilience or depression, for example. And I know for a lot of people that are watching these conversations, we're fitness professionals and we're doing our thing, but then we're seeing how our clients are battling depression, need to be a bit more resilient, or just making all these pivots, or we are personally doing it. And now we're now in this place of being wounded healers where I need to come and show up virtually or in person and have my game face on and help someone else when I'm feeling it.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
no, and
saying?
yeah, you're working through it, but you've probably found, and when you're going through something, part of the healing is teaching. So when you're teaching someone something that you're going through and just what you've learned, remember, you may be just a couple of steps ahead of where they are, and that's enough to be a teacher. You may not
Yes.
be at the top of the staircase, if you will. You're not there yet, but you can look at the person at the bottom of the staircase and say, "Hey, listen, I'm on step 3. Let me help you to get to where I am." Right? And as you go up, you're more credible to that person than the person that's the top of the staircase, if this metaphor is making sense,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they see in you themselves. The
Right.
person at the top of the stairs are so far ahead they can't necessarily relate to that person, but they can relate to you, and you can say, hey, listen, just last week I had a breakdown. I had a day when I was just on the couch and depression just overwhelmed me. And then they look at you and say, oh man, you're Martin, you have core conversations, you have this amazing Pilates business, and this happens to you. Oh my gosh, I'm going to relate to you, and I'm going to be drawn to you. And that's
Yes.
probably what's happening with you sharing and doing these conversations. And I love the
Sure.
fact that you do a conversation and not an interview, because you never know where it's going to go. And I don't know, I think that flavors the conversation a lot better. And I love
Yeah.
that term, exactly. Wounded healer. I see somebody
Mhm.
posted that.
Yes. Yeah, so for later, the comments don't pop up when you show the replay, so I'm going to read this. So it says, Wounded healer, I'm there, trying to navigate, wanting to back off because I don't feel like I'm practicing what I preach. The wounded healer line is a line that I picked up from a leadership book a long time ago. And it gave me the freedom to continue to do what I do because I felt like I had to be not perfect, but I had to have this thing figured out. I
Mm.
had to be on that journey. I had to have it together enough as opposed to be able to walk with a limp and be able to say, okay, well, I'm on step 3 and you're on step 1. Let's continue to rise
Mm.
together, right? Sort of thing. So I love that phrase because that gives me permission to continue to do my best and to grow and to progress and accept the fact that I'm not where I want to be, but I can still help you in your progress and in your journey.
Yeah. And I think that what that person said is what stops a lot of people. They feel like they're almost acting like frauds because they haven't
Yes.
conquered whatever it is that they're trying to teach other people how to conquer. And one of my favorite speakers, in fact, my favorite speaker is Les Brown. And he once talked about the fact that he was going through a separation, and his girlfriend at the time left him at the height of his speaking career. And he
Mm-hmm.
told that story authentically. And when he got off stage, a therapist, a marriage therapist who had just gotten a divorce, came up to him and said, thank you for sharing, because I feel like a fraud teaching people how to have successful marriages when I just got divorced myself. And she said to him that his speech gave her the courage to keep on in her practice, not feeling like a fraud, because the bottom line is you know what you know, and that's still more than what someone else knows. So even
Yes.
if your life isn't perfect, you have information that other people need to share, need to hear,
Mm-hmm.
and it's almost selfish to keep it to yourself, right? So don't
It
worry about it. I think
absolutely.
we focus too much on ourselves too much. And there's people that need to hear what you've learned, even if you haven't perfected it.
The world's waiting for a story.
Yeah,
No one else has it.
exactly. And that's what makes you, because every topic's been done before. Every topic's been talked about before, but it's your story, it's your personality, it's your authenticity that makes it yours. Josh Shipp, one of my mentors when it comes to speaking, said that speaking is just wisdom expressed through personality. So your personality is what people are drawn to. The wisdom is everywhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. I feel like, and Kwesi, I'm sure for you too, like as Black men in the fitness industry, we we're strong Black men, full stop. And then when we share with vulnerability, when we're in spaces like public speaking and then sharing our challenges and how we got through them, I feel like this is something that we need to do more of, if just for the sake of just representing something contrary to the ideals of the stoic, non-emoting male, Black
Mhm.
male. And so, you know what I mean? Like, so I feel like there's a sense of responsibility with this message beyond the story and wanting to share my story. I almost feel like I'm carrying this mantle of we're representing for people so that they're not just going to run in with the regular stereotype at the same time. Do you ever get that feel too?
Uh, yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm kind of a stoic person in that way. I don't really share my feelings a lot. My wife is still working on getting me to be more open.
Yes.
Um, but yes, absolutely. I do see it in the male population. I see it in the black male population too, but in male population in general. I think some things are starting to change because we
Mm-hmm.
have people like you. I've seen some people start to have this conversation. Do you see it more in the black male population? Because I just see it with men in general. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I would take your perspective on the whether it's a race issue as well.
Well, I don't know necessarily, I can't say full out that it's a race issue, but I did notice this last year when we started to see people responding to the George Floyd situation. And then we started to see more black men come up and say, I am angry. I am that mad, angry black man. That I'm not allowed to be in the corporate space. I'm not allowed to be at my workplace. I'm not allowed to be anywhere. I'm actually angry, like two tears angry. And start to see posts like that come out. I think that was the moment I started to see, okay, we have been given, sad as it sounds, a situation that was tragic enough that gave us permission to emote publicly.
Mm.
And that was the ticket for more people to be able to share their emotion, happy, sad, whatever. So like it became a social commentary for me. It's like, okay, well, this was the tragedy that was so massive that it interrupted the stereotypes of who we are, and now we can be angry in our posts, and now we could be sad at work, or now we can choose to not show up or just be off today and not have to
Mm.
perform because something has been so big that everyone understands what happened, and that must have some impact on you if you're a human being. You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
I feel like that moment was something that I just noticed as a slight shift where there was more permission for us to be vulnerable, and I have chosen to run with that and to give people space for that.
Okay. And I definitely appreciate that. And yeah, you're right. Actually, I guess people coming out and actually, as you say, emoting publicly more so more than ever. And I guess the question now is how do we continue? How do we keep this continuing with positive prompts, right? We have the
Yes.
negative prompt of someone dying, and positive prompts. I guess you're part of that answer. How do we keep the conversation going and make sure that we encourage this through positive prompts?
Mhm.
Yeah, and I guess that probably happens in our own homes first, right? When we talk to our kids about how we're feeling, and then they feel the courage to open up how they feel as well. I guess it always seems to start in the home, right?
It does. And
Yeah.
that's not just like idealism speaking. I really believe that it does. And I've said it many times before, like from our first conversation, when you said that line, like making my long roads his shortcuts, speaking of raising your son, that's just not just like life hacks in terms of doing stuff or even financially. It's like the emotional journey that we've gone on to move from being stoic to sharing emotions with your wife, to being able to just do that with your kids. Like you're giving your child from 2 years old the permission to live a fuller life because we've had to break down those walls, and now we're doing where he's starting where you continue from where you're at, right? So yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. And yeah, I definitely want that to be something that my son does. I mean, I guess I can pick your brain on that. You have older boys. So I just want to make sure that my son always feels like he can talk to me and that he can also show his emotion. And I'm just learning about this as I go along and doing the best I can to kind of show him that
Yep.
you can be yourself and authentic, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
My favorite line, and the one I live by, and no one's really for my kids this works fantastically, and I've always said is boys speak shoulder to shoulder and girls speak face to face.
Okay.
Right. So, and what I mean by that is the conversations I've had with my boys over the years have been in the car when you're, or as opposed to over the dinner table.
Hmm.
Over the dinner table, how was your day today? Good. How was school? Fun. What did you learn? Nothing. Okay, in the car, Dad, you should have seen I did this to this guy in basketball. I should have seen my friend did this. It was so funny. Blah blah blah. They'll talk my ear off in the car, but when it feels like an interrogation, you get nothing.
Yeah.
So over time, I've learned that like talking shoulder to shoulder with them is the most comfortable way to hear those stories and stay connected and hear what's going on in their minds and in their hearts, to a point where I would, if we're going out for dinner, I choose somewhere that's further. So we're having a conversation in the car on the way to the restaurant, as opposed to when we get to the restaurant, sit there, say nothing, and then drive home. So I'll find some, let's go to Milton tonight instead of like going to Boston Pizza, which is like a 2-minute drive, right? So we can have that shoulder to shoulder conversation moment that we might not get when we're in the restaurant face to
Yeah.
face.
No, that's interesting. That's an interesting quote. I like that. I'm gonna remember that one: shoulder to shoulder versus face to face. I was reading a book. I don't remember the name of it, but it was saying that men tend to take a little bit longer to express, and so he may hop in the car after school, and you're asking him these questions, and he may say things, but all of a sudden, when things process later, he may
Yes.
come up to you all of a sudden
Mm-hmm.
and just out of the blue, and you may have that face to face moment. And I don't know if you've had that before, but I've
Yeah.
heard that that's the kind of the way it happens.
Yes, totally. Yeah. All of a sudden, it's just like, who's this guy? They just open
Yeah,
up, right? It's just like,
I
it's
was
almost like
asking.
it's like
Yeah,
booting. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like spinning and spinning, and okay, now it's loaded. Here it is, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone raising
Yeah.
their hand. Is that or what are they saying?
Yeah, that's Blaze. It's Marianne saying hello. Now, Scoop Pilates, Philip Griffin, is a friend and colleague of mine in the States here, a Pilates guy. Another black guy teaching Pilates who's doing his thing. So I love having him in the space. His comment is there is a sense of less hiding our true selves, especially among our white friends and colleagues, able to be more of our true selves, maybe because of, or just being tired of hiding, really, right? Like, yeah, I feel like that. Like there's a sense of being able to show more of our true selves.
And what is an example of that? And this is just me naively
Sure.
asking. So, what were you hiding that you can show your white colleagues now?
Yeah. Yeah. So you put it in the comment section when it comes to it. But yeah, I mean, I wonder, my guess, generally speaking, is like, those times when you don't want to overreact to something because you figure that's going to be dismissed as being emotional or just being angry. Like, I'll give you an example. I have a friend who is a principal. He's a no, when he was a teacher and he's working in the school system, not as a teacher, but like in a support role. And he'll be called in to speak to a black mother who's angry with something that happened with their child. And they said, look, maybe we'll bring you in to speak to her because she's being very emotional right now.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So like that sense of her expressing herself as being dismissed as being irrational and emotional. So maybe if we get another black person in to talk to her, you could talk her off the ledge.
Yeah, like because you're black, you know the right language
Right.
to. Yeah, what are you gonna say? If you can diffuse a situation, you can diffuse a situation no matter what your color, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, that's kind of strange. That I mean, I understand. I've seen that type
Music.
of behavior before. But if
Yeah.
you're in a position where you deal with parents and you deal with parents that are disagreeing with a lot of things you do, you've probably dealt with anger before. So no matter what color the person is who's angry, deal with it the way you deal with it, right? And it's
Right.
almost insulting just to say, okay, here's the black teacher, deal with that parent.
Right. Yeah. And they would never say it that way, but he gets it. Like he's like,
Yeah,
I know
that's
why
what's
you
happening.
called me, right? Like, come on, man. Like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You'll understand that. You'll understand how to diffuse her more than I can. Where chances are, the issue is just something that is not even race related. It might be, there's a lot of things that are common issues, but they're just
Yes.
expressed differently. The reaction to them is expressed differently.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. It's funny that you
Have you?
mentioned that too. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask. I mean, because your kids are older. I mean, have you
Mhm.
seen anything in the school system that kind of, you know, makes you think things are a little bit different? You're treated differently, or your boys are treated differently. And if it has anything changed since last year, have you seen anything like that?
Yeah, actually, sad to say, like there's a lot of stuff that happened in our area. The Peel School Board, they've been under fire for a lot of systemic racism. Like they did a full report on it and how there was a like unprecedented number of suspensions on black students and racism towards it. Like so a lot of stuff was happening at a high level. And then for my son, there was times when then that where that happened, where it's clearly that situation happened. I don't want to get into it too much, but like something like that happened where I had to go into the school and actually, and to Phil's point earlier, I had to go into the school and going into the school, I took time to make sure that I didn't look like I was coming out of a personal training session. I went home, I put a suit on, I walked into the school looking like an educated parent as opposed to this hood black guy coming in to flip tables because I was mad at how my son was being treated. And I knew that, and I felt that if I went in, I have a master's degree, I'm wearing a suit, I speak intelligently, that I would be heard more that way than if I was to walk in straight out of a personal training session looking like whatever the case is and just having that persona.
Hmm. It's interesting that you feel you have to do that preparatory work,
Yes,
whereas not everybody does, right? And as
right,
a black man, there's other races that don't feel like they have to do their preparatory work, right?
right.
So that's interesting that that's still the feeling that we get,
Mhm.
and there's justified reason to feel that way. I wonder what would have happened had you walked in just the way you're dressed now, or after a full session.
Yeah,
You shouldn't have to prove your education. As soon as you open your mouth, and they should say, okay, let's talk.
right. Should. Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
should being the word, should being the operative
Should.
word there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, and there's times when I've done that, but I felt like this is that serious of a situation, and it did escalate. We got a letter of apology from the superintendent for the Peel education. Like it was like we could have sued him. Like it still crosses my mind from time to time. So it escalated that high to get it. So I felt like okay, I can come in like that, or I can come in a way that reflects the seriousness of this matter as well. So I felt like it would have been just one more hurdle to go over to get to that place if I wasn't presenting a certain way. And I think that's something that I might not do if that happened again. But at the time when that happened, I felt like that was actually necessary to be heard.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's interesting. And I'm
Yeah.
hoping that things maybe have changed, and maybe that's one of the, I guess, benefits of the world that we're in now, is that maybe that's not going to be as necessary anymore. I could be but naive. I don't have a child in the school system. Um, but I'm just wondering if things are changed. If you don't have that feeling as much, if that were to happen, say this coming school year.
Yeah, no, I don't. But in one way, it's good to know that I don't feel that way. But then there's other side of it that, you know, excuse my skepticism, but you still feel like it's performative in the sense that, oh, okay, well, this is the time for Black people. This is the time for Indigenous people. Like they're being heard right now, so let's give them some attention. So I think there's a bit of sensitivity to that wasn't there before too, right? So I'm playing both sides and just hoping that the experience, by the time your son gets into school, that such a positive, full experience that like my son just graduating, that's tapered off, that's been pinched off by a lot of what's happened in our social context here
Yeah,
in
yeah,
our area, right? So
yeah. And you know what? I may be naive, but I think that anytime we can communicate in a in a sense of with a sense of love and calm, no matter how we're feeling inside,
mhm.
I think that that will trump any kind of external appearance. If you walk in and no matter what's going on around you, you're you speak slowly, you speak with you articulate your words, you speak with empathy and love and understanding. Just stay with that, And I believe that you'll get through to anybody and you'll erase any barriers that may have existed, even if it does exist in someone else's mind.
Yes.
And that might be a naive statement, but it hasn't failed for me so far
Right.
in my other
Exactly.
areas.
No, no, I agree. But that takes energy. It takes work to get there, and that's so I agree with you totally. And that's the work that we need to do to some degree as well, right? To be able to topple that stereotype, to topple that
Does it take energy
preconceived.
or does it just take you being present?
Well, in my situation, and granted that was a few years ago, I felt I was so exasperated and so angry, and then that sense of rage at how my son was being treated, that I didn't have the bandwidth to go in with this sense of, okay, let me do all the things you just said, because I know that formula works, but I didn't have the energy for that. And so think about the times when you've been beat down so many times by something, that to rise up again and to do that, I just want to just cut to the chase. Okay, like if I didn't want to have to go in there and then be dismissed. Okay, thanks for your time. I'll get back to you. It's like, no, no, no. I want to speak to this person and then this person and then this person. I don't know. So like, I agree with you, and I think 97% of the time I go with that mindset of I can just go in with a smile, be articulate, express myself, be calm, patient. But I was mad. You know what I mean? So, but I was like really mad, and I was like, I wanted to counteract the rage with this sense of my, my presence. Because like even Meryl's comment there, we need to be respected no matter how we're dressed. 100%, 100% agree with that. And I don't want to play into stereotypes. I don't want to be, and what you're saying, I agree with that. I don't want to be a slave to a stereotype. I don't want to play
Yeah.
into a stereotype. I don't want to be subject to a stereotype. But then I also know sometimes that, well, I feel like sometimes like I just don't have energy to play those games right now. So I'm just gonna just go with it. So I mean, I'm not saying that was the best approach, but like in that time, I felt like that's all I had.
Yeah, yeah. And that worked, and then that's okay. And accepting yourself for, whatever response you happen to choose that day and knowing why, and
Hmm.
that's a win in of itself, right? You're like, okay,
Yes.
I know this is not how I would normally do things, but today this is how I'm going to do it, right?
Yes.
It's like
Yeah.
90% of the time you don't have any. If someone cuts you off in traffic, you're cool. One day you're on your way somewhere, and someone just cuts you off at the wrong time,
Yep.
and maybe you show them one of your fingers. So and then that's okay, and that's that okay, that was just a one-off. Normally
Hmm.
I'm like this, so
Normally I'm like
it's
this.
what it is.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no, we have that. And yeah, so I appreciate your perspective on these things, and you bring a very balanced perspective. And like we said earlier, with your credibility, it's not like you're just talking about just stuff out of left field. Like you've lived this from different perspectives, right? And like I know we're right at 11 o'clock right now, but one of the things that actually, how are you for time right now too? Did you get a bounce?
I'm good.
Okay, cool. One of the things that we were talking about before, and we had a conversation online, is that when we talk about almost like armchair quarterbacks, but armchair policing, right? And that ties
Yeah,
into a conversation we just had a minute ago. Is like, well, I can come at like this is the way because this is how people see it, so I got to do this. And then you have brought some amazing balanced perspectives to that. Saying like, whether it's on the armchair policing type thing, as I call it. So where you're saying, well, what about this? What about their experience? What like the time that they have to make those decisions, like all these things are tied into that, right? Like I like the fact that you're looking at it from a perspective of saying like, well, what is all the context? What is everything that's happening here, and how do we present in those moments? And that's a really vague statement, um, but
yeah.
yeah.
I know what you're getting at, and then the main thing with policing, I mean, I go back and forth with people on this, but the main thing is just when you see a news clip, look into the whole story, look into everything that you can possibly find that happened leading up to what you see in that sensationalized, whatever, 30-second clip or less, and ask yourself, knowing everything, what would I have done in that situation? Throwing color aside. You do that, and you're going to find yourself with a much more balanced perspective on policing in general. And I'm actually doing a podcast at 1 p.m. today with a former police officer, and we're going to talk just about this, right? You have to look at certain situations. There's a lot of situations where people are outraged at police that they shouldn't be, and that's it. And I'm not even someone who needs to defend the police officers, because my force kind of didn't really stand behind me when I went to jail. So I have every right to be anti-police, even though I was a police officer, but I'm pro-truth and pro-full story. And that's all I
Well
encourage
said.
everyone else. Yeah.
Well said. Nice. Man, that tied that up nicely.
No worries.
Can you just break both for a second? What groups have you spoken to? Like, what are some of the people and the organizations that you have had the privilege of speaking in front of with your story?
Yeah, there's just, I mean, from a first responder standpoint, Blue Line, biggest magazine in one of the bigger magazines in North America. They have a conference every year. I've spoken for them. I've done a couple of organizations down in the States, the Kings County Sheriffs in Seattle. There's been a few others throughout the States from a first responder standpoint, as well as the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs here. That's from a first responder standpoint. I've done some educators, occupational clerical technical unit in Halton District School Board for schools. Peel District School Board, I spoke for Streetsville. I think that
Yes.
that's pretty close to you. And I'm speaking for a few other Peel schools in September and October. And that I'm going to be doing more high schools there. And then what other organizations? City of Burlington. I live in Burlington. So government organizations there as well too. So and if it's adults, if you're stressed out, if you're burnt out, that's who I speak to. And for high schools, just about resilience and mental health, that's my thing. So I'm looking to do a lot more in Ontario and throughout Canada when it comes to high schools, and then eventually colleges and universities as well this year.
Awesome. And can you type in the comment section your book so people can look for it and purchase that and support it?
Yeah, sure. Let me just see if I can find a link there. Sometimes when you're on your iPhone, you can, long hold the link and then just paste it. Yeah. I'm on my iPad, so I'm just going to see if I can do that. But it's just easier just to reach for it and type it in. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
And when's the journal released? Hopefully.
Goal is August. September latest.
Right.
Yeah, I'll just put my website there because you can get everything there. Easiest. Amazing. Right, you go to KwesiMillington.com is all my information there. KwesiMillington.com/store is where you can get my book.
Amazing. Done. Man, so good catching up with you. Like, you're just doing some awesome stuff, man. Cheering for you as always.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. And I keep saying it, but one of these days I'm going to be in one of your Pilates classes because I really want to take it. It's just a matter of finding the time because you're still teaching. Are you still doing online classes, or are you just in person, or what are you up to?
Yeah, no, I'm keeping the online stuff open. Like, there's so many different options that come by having that open. So I'm going to keep growing that piece of the business. The online, the in-class stuff, the in-person is always there. I'm grateful for it, but I need to drive the online business. So that's where my focus is.
Okay, good. And do you know the days of the week? Is it still the same time every week, or?
Tuesday, Thursday, Fridays are my classes. And then virtual onlines are always open, schedules open for those like all over the place. So
So Tuesday,
yeah,
Thursday, Friday, what time?
midday. So Tuesday, Thursdays are at 1:30, and then Fridays are at 12:30.
12:30. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and we'll get Cindy in there as well.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, she has her 3 computers corporate work, so it might be harder to get her in, but I'll be joining.
Awesome. All right. So good seeing you again, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And yes, thank you, Michelle and Philip and everyone who had comments in here. Meryl's in Germany. So it's very
Oh, cool. I
cool.
love that it's
Yeah.
so world for you now. Congratulations, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you. All right. We'll talk soon. All right. Thank you so much. Spooling there. All right. We're good. All right, Kwesi. Thanks, man. I'll talk to you later.
Bye for now.